Emma Thompson's fingers moved quickly across her keyboard as the clock on her office wall clicked past midnight. The soft glow of her computer screen lit up her tired face in the darkness of the Turin Historical Institute. Empty coffee cups littered her desk, telling the story of another late night at work. She wasn't supposed to be here this late. The Institute had strict rules about overnight access to the alien archives. But something in the files she'd found earlier that day wouldn't let her sleep. Earth's nickname in the alien records kept appearing. The Dark Planet. "You're still here." Mike Anderson's voice made her jump. Her research assistant stood in the doorway, his own coffee cup in hand. "I thought I was the only one crazy enough to stay this late." "Mike, come look at this." Emma waved him over, pushing her brown hair away from her face. "I keep finding these weird references in the alien files. They're not just calling Earth the Dark Planet. They're using our ghost stories as warning signs." Mike pulled up a chair beside her desk. The wheels squeaked against the floor as he sat down. "Warning signs? For what?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." Emma opened another file, this one showing strange symbols that slowly changed into English text as the translation program did its work. "Look at this one. It's from their educational database." Mike leaned closer, reading aloud. "Caution. Dark Planet inhabitants create defensive narratives from all encounters. Approach with extreme care." Reference: the Hook Man incident. He looked at Emma with wide eyes. "Wait, they're talking about the old campfire story. The one about the hook on the car door." Emma nodded, her excitement growing. "And it's not just that one. I found references to Bloody Mary, the vanishing hitchhiker. All these stories we thought were just urban legends. The aliens have them listed as historical events." "That can't be right," Mike said, but he was already reaching for Emma's spare tablet to help search. "These are just old stories people made up to scare each other." "Are they?" Emma pulled up another file. This one showed a damaged alien surveillance pod from the 1950s. Its bent metal frame and broken lights looked eerily similar to the traditional description of the Hook Man's weapon. What if they're not made up at all? What if they're memories? Records of things people saw but couldn't explain. The translation program beeped, finishing another file. This one made both of them sit up straighter. It was a formal document, marked with the seals of 3 different alien species. The title read, "Dark Planet Quarantine Procedures. Updated Warning Status." "Look at the date on this," Emma pointed. "It's from 1973. That's decades before official first contact. They were watching us all this time, and we were watching them back. We just didn't know what we were seeing." Mike rubbed his tired eyes. "So every time they tried to study us, we turned it into a horror story," Emma finished. "And not just that. We spread the stories around, warned each other, built up this whole folklore about mysterious lights, strange creatures, people who weren't quite human." She laughed softly. "We scared them without even knowing they existed." A sudden noise in the hallway made them both turn. The motion-activated lights outside the office flickered on, but no one was there. "Just the cleaning robots," Mike said, but he sounded unsure. Emma turned back to her computer, her hands shaking slightly with excitement as she opened another file. "There's so much more here, Mike. This is just the beginning. We need to go through all of it. The Institute directors aren't going to like this," Mike warned. "This could change everything we think we know about human history." Emma nodded, already lost in the next file. "That's exactly why we have to keep looking. Our ghost stories scared an entire galaxy. Don't you want to know why?" The office fell quiet except for the soft tapping of keys and the hum of computers. Outside, the lights in the hallway flickered once more, then went dark. Neither Emma nor Mike noticed the shadow that moved past the door or the soft click of something metallic being carefully set down. 3 days after their late-night discovery, Emma and Mike sat in the Institute's underground data center. The room was cold, filled with the quiet hum of servers. Screens covered the walls, each showing different pieces of their growing puzzle. "Play that recording again," Emma said, leaning forward in her chair. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but she couldn't stop now, not when they were so close to understanding. Mike tapped his tablet, and a scratchy video appeared on the main screen. The footage was old, from 1968, showing a teenage girl talking to a news reporter outside a high school bathroom. And when I looked in the mirror and said her name the third time, there was this weird red light behind me, the girl in the video said. Then the mirror just broke, like something hit it from the other side. Emma paused the video. "Now look at this." She pulled up an alien incident report on another screen. "Surveillance pod malfunction in Sector 7. Earth date 1968. Cloaking device failure resulted in visible red spectrum leak. Target mirror shattered during emergency extraction." Mike whistled softly. Bloody Mary wasn't a ghost. She was an alien observer who got caught. And that's not all. Emma started pulling up more files. Remember the Hookman story? The original version from 1957 talks about a scratching sound on the car roof. The couple drives away, and later finds a giant hook embedded in the metal. She brought up another alien document. This one showed technical drawings of an emergency escape suit, complete with a large curved climbing hook for scaling balls. "A scout ship crashed that night," Mike read from the file. "The pilot tried to hide on the nearest vehicle, but lost their grip when the car moved. They had to abandon their climbing gear to avoid detection." Emma nodded excitedly. The aliens didn't understand why we turned these encounters into scary stories. They expected us to either worship them as gods or panic and reveal their existence. Instead, we turned them into warnings. "But why?" Mike asked. "Why didn't people figure out what they were really seeing?" "Because of people like him." Emma opened another file. The black and white photo showed a serious-looking man in a suit standing next to an old radio tower. Thomas Walker. He worked as a radio operator in 1952. He picked up their communications by accident one night. Mike leaned closer to read the file. It says he published a book of local ghost stories a year later. "He knew exactly what he found," Emma said. "But he also knew no one would believe him if he told the truth. So he hid it in plain sight, made it entertainment instead of evidence. And he wasn't the only one." She pulled up more files, dozens of them. Each showed similar stories. People who had seen things they couldn't explain, who had proof of something beyond Earth, but chose to turn their experiences into urban legends instead of scientific claims. "But how did it spread?" Mike asked. "How did it become such a perfect cover-up?" Emma smiled. "Because that's what humans do best. We tell stories. Every time the aliens tried to observe us, tried to study us in secret, someone saw something, and instead of keeping the sighting to themselves, they turned it into a story. A warning. Don't go to that mirror at midnight. Don't park under trees on dark roads. Don't trust strangers who look just a little bit wrong." And the stories spread, Mike realized, protecting more people without them even knowing they were being protected. Exactly. Emma looked at the screens surrounding them, each one showing a different piece of humanity's accidental defense system. We didn't need a global conspiracy or advanced technology. We just needed to do what came naturally, share scary stories around a campfire. A notification popped up on Emma's tablet. New files had been found in the archive, these ones marked with red warning symbols. As she opened the first one, her eyes widened. "Mike," she said slowly, "I don't think all these stories are in the past. Look at this report. It's dated last week." The next morning, Emma walked into her office and found Mike already there. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "You need to see this," he said without looking up. "I've been going through those new files we found. Earth isn't just in their records. We're marked as a Level 5 hazard zone." Emma put down her coffee cup and hurried over. "Level 5. What does that mean?" "It's their highest danger rating." Mike pulled up a document covered in alien symbols and official looking seals. Most death worlds, planets with dangerous creatures or toxic atmospheres, are only level 3. We're something special. Emma read through the translated text, her eyes getting wider. This can't be right. They're not afraid of our weapons or our technology. They're afraid of... She paused, reading the line again. They're afraid of our ability to see through their disguises. Not just that, Mike said. He opened another file. Look at what happened to the research team they sent to study us in 1950. A man named Thomas Walker caught their whole operation by accident. The screen showed an old photograph of a small radio station in the middle of nowhere. Next to it was a transcript of strange signals that Thomas Walker had picked up one quiet night shift. He was working late, Mike explained, when he recorded a series of weird transmissions. Instead of reporting it to the government, he wrote them down and turned them into campfire stories, published them in the local paper as Tales from the Night Shift. Emma leaned closer to read the stories. The midnight caller, the strange lights, the whispers between stations. She looked at Mike. These weren't just stories, were they? Mike shook his head. They were actual alien communications, but the way he wrote them, making them sound scary but not quite real, it was perfect. People remembered them, shared them, stayed alert for anything similar. But nobody panicked. And the aliens noticed, Emma said, understanding dawning on her face. Every other species they've encountered either ignored the signs of their presence or freaked out when they realized they weren't alone. But humans, we turned it into a defense system, Mike finished. The stories spread. People started watching the shadows, checking their mirrors, listening for strange sounds. We made ourselves nearly impossible to study without being noticed. Emma sat down heavily in her chair. That's why they called us the Dark Planet. Not because we were dangerous, but because we were aware. We could sense them even when we didn't know what we were sensing. She pulled up another file, this one showing a graph. It tracked alien observation attempts over the past century. The line showed a steady decrease, with sharp drops after each major spread of a new urban legend. Look at this, she said. Every time they tried something new, we turned it into a story. And each story made their next attempt harder. Mike pointed to a note at the bottom of the graph. Warning: human pattern recognition exceeds safe observation parameters. Direct contact not recommended. They tried to study us in secret, Emma said slowly, but our stories kept spreading the warning. Watch out. Something strange is out there. Something is watching. She laughed softly. We scared them off with ghost stories. A small alert popped up on her screen. Someone had accessed their research files from another terminal in the building. Emma frowned. Only she and Mike had clearance for those files. Mike, she said, her voice tense, did you give anyone else access to our work? He shook his head. No. Why? Because someone's reading everything we found. Right now. She typed quickly, trying to trace the access point. The location came up. Sub-basement level 3. But that's impossible, Mike said. Level 3 has been closed for renovation. There's no one down there. They looked at each other as the same thought hit them both. Maybe the stories weren't just history after all. Maybe they were still serving their original purpose, warning humanity about the Watchers in the dark. Emma and Mike didn't go down to sub-basement level 3 that night. Instead, they dug deeper into the files, looking for answers about who else might know their secret. What they found changed everything they thought they knew about the Cold War. Project Folklore, Emma read from her screen the next morning. Started in 1962 by Agent Robert Matthews of the CIA. Look at this, Mike. Both American and Soviet intelligence knew about the aliens all along. Mike zoomed in on an old black and white photo showing a serious-looking man in a dark suit. Agent Matthews doesn't look like someone who tells ghost stories. That's exactly why it works so well. Emma pulled up more files. His team's job was to track alien activity and hide it in plain sight. Every time there was an incident, they turned it into an urban legend. The screen showed a report from 1964. 3 aliens had tried to blend in with humans at a small-town diner. Something about their behavior seemed off, and locals started talking. Instead of shutting down the rumors, Matthew's team shaped them into a story about mysterious men in black suits who showed up asking strange questions. The men in black, Mike said, shaking his head. They turned a failed alien infiltration into a story so good that Hollywood made movies about it. It was brilliant, Emma said. The more movies and books people made about men in black, the harder it became for real aliens to hide among us. Everyone was watching for anything unusual. She opened another file, this one marked Top Secret. It showed a map of the United States covered in colored dots. Look at this. Red dots are actual alien sightings. Blue dots show where the stories spread. Mike whistled softly. The blue dots make a shield around every major city. Matthews called it social armor, Emma said. He knew we couldn't stop aliens from watching us, but we could make sure everyone was watching them back. A new document popped up on Mike's screen. Here's something from the Soviet side. They had their own program called Operation Whisper. Same idea. Turn every alien encounter into a folk tale that would spread naturally. Emma leaned over to look. Did they work together? American and Soviet teams? No, Mike said, reading further. They were competing at first, each trying to handle the alien presence their own way. But then they realized something interesting. He pointed to a graph. The stories were more effective when both sides spread different versions of them. It created confusion about the details, but the important parts, the warnings, stayed the same. Emma nodded slowly. So while everyone thought America and Russia were in a space race, they were actually in a story race, Mike finished. Each side trying to create better warnings, better protection through folklore. He paused, looking at another file. But I think Matthews figured out something even more important. What's that? The aliens didn't just hate our stories. They were scared of how fast we made them. Mike pulled up an alien analysis report. Most species take hundreds of years to create cultural warnings about new threats. We do it in weeks. A single story can spread across the whole planet in less than a month. Emma was about to respond when her computer beeped. Another alert from sub-basement level 3. This time, someone was trying to access their personal files. Okay, that's it, she said, standing up. I'm tired of wondering. We need to know who's down there. Mike grabbed her arm. Wait, look at the time stamp on that access attempt. He pointed to his screen. It matches exactly with the pattern in Matthews' reports. Every 3 hours, 17 minutes. Emma sat back down slowly. You think? I think Project Folklore never ended, Mike said quietly. I think someone is still defending Earth, and now they know that we know. From somewhere in the building, an elevator started moving. Its destination, floor 5, where Emma and Mike were working. They looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. Were they about to meet the real men in black? The elevator doors opened, but no men in black stepped out. Instead, a cleaning cart rolled into view, pushed by an old man with kind eyes and gray hair. He smiled at Emma and Mike, as if he'd been expecting them. Working late again? He asked, his voice friendly, just like Linda Cooper used to do. Emma froze. Linda Cooper was a name in their files, a police officer from 1973 who had reported strange calls about suspicious neighbors. But they hadn't told anyone about finding those records. How do you know about Linda Cooper? Mike asked carefully. The old man parked his cart and sat down in an empty chair. Because I was there. My name's Bill Richards. I was her partner on the force. He looked at their screens, still showing the Project Folklore files. And I see you've been learning about our little war. War? Emma asked. What war? Bill smiled. The one we won without firing a shot. The one we fought with stories instead of bullets. He pointed to Linda's police reports on their screen. Those strange calls she wrote about. Those were really about alien infiltrators. He pulled an old badge from his pocket and set it on the desk. It looked like a normal police badge, except for a tiny symbol in one corner, the same symbol they'd seen in the Project Folklore files. Every town had a few of us, Bill explained. Regular people with regular jobs, but we knew what to watch for. When Linda started getting calls about neighbors acting strange, we knew what it meant. The aliens were trying something new. What were they trying? Mike asked. To live among us. Study us up close. Bill shook his head. But they didn't understand how humans think. They could copy how we look, but not how we act. People noticed little things. Neighbors who never ate in public, who didn't know simple things about their fake backstories, who moved too perfectly. Emma leaned forward. So what did you do? We helped spread the stories, Bill said. The tales about pod people, about body snatchers, about neighbors who aren't quite right. Pretty soon, everyone was paying attention to the little details without knowing why. The aliens couldn't hide anymore. There were too many eyes watching. He pointed to different files on their screens. Every time they tried a new way to infiltrate us, we turned it into a warning story. They tried hiding in crowds. We spread urban legends about identical strangers. They tried using empty houses as bases. We created stories about haunted buildings. They tried working at night. We made up tales about mysterious lights and midnight visitors. And it worked, Mike asked. Better than anyone expected, Bill said. By the 1980s, the aliens had given up on secret infiltration. Too many of their agents got caught because someone noticed something just wasn't right about them. All because people remembered the stories. Emma thought about all the urban legends she knew. So every creepy story about strange neighbors or weird encounters was a teaching tool, Bill finished. A way to train people to spot things that didn't belong without causing panic. The greatest defense system ever created, and most people thought they were just sharing scary stories. He stood up slowly. And now you know why I'm here. Some folks think it's time to tell the truth. Others think the stories still need to do their job. He looked at them both carefully. What do you think? Before either could answer, all the screens in the room flashed red. New files were appearing in the database, hundreds of them. Current files. That's not possible, Emma whispered, reading the dates. These reports are from this year. From this month. Bill nodded grimly. Did you think the war was over? The stories are still protecting us, even now. Maybe especially now. He reached for his cart. The only question is, what story are you two going to become? Emma and Mike looked at each other, then at their screens full of fresh reports. They had wanted to find the truth behind urban legends. Instead, they had found themselves in the middle of one. And it wasn't over yet. The next morning, Emma and Mike met Bill in a small coffee shop 3 blocks from the Institute. After his revelation the night before, they had hundreds of questions. But Bill spoke first. You need to see how the aliens view us, he said, sliding a small data drive across the table. Dr. James Russell collected these reports over 30 years. They show why Earth became known as the scariest planet in the galaxy. Back in their office, Emma plugged in the drive. The screen filled with alien documents, all talking about humans. Mike read one out loud. Humans are paranoid apex predators with an unusual ability to detect patterns, he read. They turn every unexplained event into a warning story. These stories spread faster than our surveillance can adapt. Emma opened another file. This one's from their military, she said. They're calling us the Ghost Makers because we turn their secret operations into supernatural tales. Keep reading, Bill said. It gets better. The next document showed a meeting of alien leaders. They were arguing about Earth, trying to decide if it was worth the risk to keep studying humans. One alien commander had written, "Every failed mission becomes a story. Every exposed spy becomes a legend." They are teaching their entire species to watch for us without even knowing we exist. 3 different alien armies were using Dr. Russell's collection of local legends as a military guide, Bill explained. They thought his books of ghost stories were actually a coded record of human defensive capabilities. Mike laughed. They weren't completely wrong. Emma pulled up another report. This one had a warning label on top. Critical update on human behavior pattern. She read it out loud. Humans don't just notice patterns. They actively look for them. They check dark corners before entering rooms. They watch mirrors for movement. They listen for footsteps that don't match known patterns. Even their young are trained through scary stories to be alert for signs of our presence. The aliens couldn't understand it, Bill said. Every other species they studied either ignored strange events or panicked when they noticed something odd. But humans, he smiled. We turned their presence into entertainment. Ghost tours, horror movies, campfire stories. The better they tried to hide, the more stories we created about things hiding in the shadows. Emma opened the next file. It showed a graph of alien study missions to Earth. The numbers dropped sharply every time. A new urban legend spread worldwide. Look at this note, she said. Human defensive storytelling now reaches global coverage within days through electronic networks. Reconnaissance missions no longer viable. That's why they had to stop hiding, Mike realized. We didn't just spot them. We warned everyone else to watch for them too. Bill nodded. By trying to study us in secret, they accidentally helped us create the perfect defense system. Every failed mission taught us something new to watch for. Every exposed spy gave us new warning signs to share. Emma sat back, thinking about all the scary stories she'd grown up hearing. So when people tell urban legends, they're really teaching survival skills, Bill finished. How to spot things that don't belong. How to trust your instincts when something feels wrong. How to warn others without causing panic. A notification popped up on Emma's screen. One of their searches had found something new. A set of files about current alien activities on Earth. They're not all hiding anymore, Bill said, looking at the files. Some of them want to talk openly now. They say we've earned the right to know the truth. He looked at Emma and Mike. That's why I was sent to find you. We need to decide. Do we keep the stories going, or is it time for humanity to learn what we've really been fighting all these years? Before they could answer, all their phones buzzed at once. A new urban legend was going viral online. Something about strange lights in the sky over major cities. Emma looked at her phone, then at Bill. This isn't just a story, is it? Bill shook his head slowly. No, this time, they want us to know they're here. Emma stared at the videos flooding social media. The strange lights over cities were different this time. They formed patterns, almost like words in the sky. Next to her, Mike was reading reports from around the world. It's happening everywhere, he said. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, all at the same time. He looked up at Bill. They're really doing it. Coming out in the open. Before Bill could answer, the door opened. A tall man in a neat black suit walked in, followed by a woman in a blue military uniform. Emma recognized the man from their files. David Harris, one of the current leaders of Project Folklore. Dr. Thompson, Mr. Anderson, Harris said, nodding to them. And I see Bill has already filled you in on some things. He placed a thick folder on Emma's desk. But there's more you need to know before tonight. Tonight? Emma asked. The woman in uniform stepped forward. In 6 hours, they're going to broadcast a message to every electronic device on Earth. They think humanity is ready for the truth. Mike leaned forward. But you don't agree. Some of us think it's too soon, Harris said. Others think it's too late. The important question is, what do we do with all the stories now? The urban legends are still protecting us, still keeping people alert. If we expose them as alien encounters, we lose our best defense. Emma finished, understanding. She opened the folder Harris had brought. Inside were reports of current alien activities, Not just observation missions, but helper teams studying Earth's climate, scientists working on cures for human diseases, even cultural experts trying to find the best way to make contact. "They're already here," Mike said, reading over her shoulder. "Hundreds of them, working to help us." Bill nodded. "Some have been here for years. The stories help them too now. They use our urban legends as guidelines for what not to do, how not to frighten people." Harris picked up a report. 3 days ago, an alien medical team found a cure for a rare human disease. They had to publish it as a mysterious anonymous donation to a research hospital. If people knew the truth, everything would change, the military woman said. Some humans would welcome them. Others would panic. Many would stop trusting their neighbors, wondering who might be an alien. Emma thought about all the files they'd studied, all the ways humans had unknowingly protected themselves through stories. "So what do you want us to do?" "We need a new story," Harris said simply. "One that lets the truth come out slowly, safely. One that keeps the protective elements of urban legends while preparing people for reality." Mike looked at their research scattered across the screens. "What about the truth? That humans are the only species who turned alien observation into a planetary defense system. That our ghost stories are really survival guides." "Too direct," Bill said, shaking his head. "People need time to adjust." Emma stood up and walked to the window. The sky was getting dark, and in a few hours, everything could change. Then she smiled, turning back to the others. "What if we tell it as fiction?" she asked. "A story about stories. Something that feels like entertainment but plants the idea that maybe, just maybe, all our urban legends had a purpose." Harris looked interested. "Go on." "We publish our research as a novel," Emma said, getting excited. "The dark history behind popular urban legends. People will read it as fiction, but they'll start thinking about the patterns in their own ghost stories. They'll keep watching, keep sharing mornings, but they'll also start considering the possibility that we're not alone." The military woman checked her watch. "You have 5 hours before their broadcast. Can you do it?" Emma looked at Mike, who was already pulling up their research files. "We can try. After all," she smiled, "humans are good at spreading stories." As they began to write, more lights appeared in the darkening sky outside. This time, though, they weren't hiding. They were waiting to see what story humanity would tell about them next. 4 hours and 58 minutes later, Emma hit the publish button. Their story went live on every major news and social media website at once, thanks to Harris's connections. Mike refreshed his screen, watching the view counter start climbing. "Think it'll work?" he asked. Emma looked at the night sky through their office window. The strange lights were still there, waiting. "It has to. We need people to understand without panicking." Bill walked over with fresh coffee for everyone. "First comments are coming in," he said. "People are already connecting it to the lights in the sky." They'd written their research as a documentary novel, mixing real urban legends with the truth about alien contact. Just like the stories that had protected Earth for so long, it sat in the sweet spot between fact and fiction, making people think without forcing them to believe. Harris watched from his computer as the story spread. "It's working," he said. "Look at the pattern." On his screen, a map showed their story moving across the world. But it wasn't just being shared. People were adding their own experiences, their own strange encounters. The comment sections filled with thousands of personal stories, each one a piece of humanity's long history with their hidden visitors. 3 minutes to broadcast, the military woman announced, checking her watch. Emma looked at their story again. They'd explained how humans had turned alien encounters into urban legends, teaching each generation to watch for signs of the unknown. They'd revealed how these stories had protected Earth better than any weapon could have. But most importantly, they'd shown that humanity was ready for the next step. 1 minute, Mike said quietly. Through the window, they could see other buildings where people were gathered, watching the lights in the sky. No one was running. No one was panicking. Instead, They were doing what humans did best, sharing stories about what they saw. 30 seconds. Emma thought about all the urban legends she'd grown up hearing. Each one had been a lesson, a warning, a piece of humanity's accidental defense system. And now, they would become something else. A bridge between two worlds. 10 seconds. Look, Bill said, pointing to his tablet. The alien broadcast signal was becoming visible to their instruments, but instead of a single message, it was splitting into thousands of smaller signals. They're matching our pattern, Harris realized, spreading their message through stories, just like we do. The clock hit 0. Across the world, screens lit up with the alien message. But it wasn't the grand announcement everyone expected. Instead, each person received a different piece of the story, a personal connection to the visitors who had watched humanity turn their presence into legends. Emma read the message on her screen. To the storytellers who saw us without seeing us, who warned without knowing what you warned about, who turned our presence into protection. We have been learning from you all along. You taught us that truth is strongest when shared through stories. So here is ours. The next morning, Emma's phone was full of messages. Their story had been translated into 50 languages overnight. #Urban Legends Where a Reel was trending worldwide. But people weren't afraid. Instead, they were sharing their own experiences, adding to the growing collection of human-alien encounters. Check this out, Mike said, showing her his tablet. Someone had started a new online archive where people could submit their stories of strange encounters. Each one was tagged with both its urban legend category and its possible alien connection. They're still doing it, Emma said, smiling. Still sharing mornings, still watching for patterns. But now they know why. Bill finished. He handed her a copy of that morning's newspaper. The headline read, "Urban Legends, Humanity's First Line of Contact." Harris appeared in the doorway. "Ready for Phase 2?" he asked. "The aliens want to start matching their stories with our legends. Find out how many encounters we actually got right." Emma looked at Mike, then at Bill. They all nodded. The age of urban legends wasn't ending, it was evolving. And humanity's greatest defense had become its greatest strength. The ability to turn the unknown into stories that everyone could share. In the sky above, the lights began forming new patterns. Not warnings anymore, but invitations. It was time for humanity to add some new chapters to their book of legends.